Writing online completely changed my life because about 3 years ago I was mowing lawns for a living for $30 an hour, working 9-hour days, and I was pretty broke, to be honest with you. And today, if you fast forward to today, I get to live in Bali, get to travel wherever I want. Last year I was in Colombia, I was in Europe, Colombia and Bali this year. Australia, Bali. Bali's kind of like a bit of a base for me now. But it wasn't always like this. And the thing that really changed was I started writing online. Like that was it. But where I was at that time it might be where you are right now, or it might be something that you can relate to. But I was stuck. I was completely stuck in what I felt like was like a halfway between freedom and a 9 to 5 in the rat race. I felt like I wasn't quite achieving the freedom I wanted. I was living in Australia. I was working a gardening job. It was like a very labor intensive, basically on minimum wage, getting paid cash because they didn't want to pay me on the books because it meant they could save some money. It was a win-win, but at the same time I was only making sort of like minimum wage living in Australia, and I was just living kind of paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't very fulfilled. The days were long and I didn't really feel like I had any purpose. Didn't feel like I was out of the rat race, although I sort of like moved to Australia to escape the typical path. And I did have a little business running back home online, but it didn't fulfill me. It didn't really fill up my cup, and it definitely didn't have the long-term potential I wanted in my work. I wanted to start getting paid for being myself and getting paid for my ideas instead of mowing lawns or doing lead generation for a little business I had back home. But the belief I had was that, there's no way I can get paid to write. There's no way I can get paid to write online. There's no way I can get paid for my ideas. And I just thought, well, maybe I could monetize it somehow. Maybe if I worked with a company, or maybe if I sold my services to someone. But I didn't really have an idea of how I could truly go all in on this and become a writer, a fully fledged successful writer online. I just didn't know how it worked. But the biggest thing was, this lack of purpose, this lack of a creative mission meant that I was drifting into bad habits. I was eating a lot of crap food. I was going out and partying a lot, maybe doing a few things I shouldn't have been. I didn't really have a purpose. I didn't really have something to strive for. And my income was basically paycheck to paycheck. So it wasn't like I was trading freedom and purpose for a lot of money. I wasn't really getting paid that much as a gardener. And that's when I was like, screw it. I'm going to start writing online. So I started writing online. I was like, I'm going to start posting tweets. So I stumbled across like a video. I think it was from like Ali Abdaal. And he was like, if you write online, you can make really good money writing online. I was like, okay, let's try this. Let's go post on Twitter. And how I started was, I was like, okay, I can start writing blogs. Because Ali Abdaal told me I could start writing blogs. I was like, great, I love writing long form. I love writing these long essays. I'd done it in the past and I really enjoyed it and got into a flow state. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to write these blogs, right? But blogs were kind of dying at the time, and I was writing them every single week and people were reading them. But the people that were reading them were like from my Instagram audience, and I was getting quite a bit of backlash because I was sharing my opinions and sharing what I believed to people that already knew me. And I lost a few friends along the way, just because when you put your opinions and your heart out to the world, there's always people that are going to disagree with you. So I was like, this isn't really working. So what I did is I started posting on Twitter. And that was when I transitioned from just writing blogs to writing online. That was when I was like, I'm not just promoting my writing to an audience on Instagram. I'm actually going to be writing tweets. I'm actually going to be growing my audience with writing. But But here was the problem, right? It was really, really hard. Like it took me 4 months to get 250 followers. And I started taking it all a bit, I think I took it all for granted, having an Instagram audience. I was like, okay, I just thought it'd be easy to grow an audience on Twitter. It wasn't at all. It took me 4 months to get 250 followers. I had like no engagement, no clients. I had no money coming in basically from that. And by the way, I've got some notes here, so I'm just referring to those. So yeah, it basically was taking me a long time to grow my audience, and I would spend ages like writing these long form posts and like promoting my blogs and stuff, and it just wasn't getting the traction. None of it was getting the traction I wanted, and it would just flop. Like I'd write long form posts like threads, and they would just completely flop. And I was ready to quit, to be honest with you. I was like, you know what, screw this. Perfect timing with the drilling. So yeah, I realized like, okay, what was I doing wrong? And what I realized is like what I was doing, and this is the common problem I see a lot of content creators make, not just writers, content creators in general, is I was just creating content, right? How-tos, tips, tricks, like trying to build some authority, trying to build up, position myself as an expert, but by writing like these how-tos and these strange like essays about Nietzsche and all this stuff. I didn't even know that much about him. I was just trying to get this traction on Twitter, right? But yeah, it wasn't really working. And then I created a swipe file, or I downloaded a swipe file of all the top creators in the space on Twitter. I started copying their posts. Again, that wasn't working. And I was just like posting like 4 or 5 times a day while I was at my gardening job. Sort of like just posts were just flopping. And occasionally something would go viral, like I'd write like a question like, do you believe in God? And that would go viral. And I thought I was, I couldn't really figure out why my audience wasn't growing, although I was getting these occasional viral posts. I couldn't figure out why people weren't engaging with my other posts, because they were like basically copy and paste from the posts that were doing really well with other creators. I couldn't understand it. And I was like, why does no one care? Like, why does no one care? And I realized the truth was people care more about a story. People care more about you and your story than they do content, right? And it was actually one of my friends who started telling me, like, why don't you start sharing more about yourself? But I had all these doubts, and I had all these like limiting beliefs, about sharing my story, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically I stopped producing content and I started storytelling. I started sharing stuff about my life. I'd lived quite an interesting life, but it wasn't really necessarily the interesting parts that mattered. It was just the everyday things. And so I posted my first story on Twitter, and it didn't go mega viral, but someone reached out to me and said, hey, I really loved the post was about me finding fulfillment when I used to chase, highs and cheap dopamine, and I basically found fulfillment through meaningful work and finding my purpose. And how, when I was in Australia before, which was like a few years before, I was a bit of a party boy and I was chasing happiness, and how I sort of like found fulfillment, and that had actually given me a lot more, that meant a lot more to me, and that actually gave me that put me in a much better place in life. And so that post ended up getting, somebody messaged me, he said, I really love the life you built. I got on a call with him. Turns out he wanted to build his brand. He wanted to tell his story. Perfect. Signed him. That was my first client. That felt pretty amazing, to be honest. That was my first coaching client. $899. Didn't know what to charge him. And I just was like, screw it, let's do it. Then I shared how I got that client. So like there was a process to it. Telling the stories, talking to one person. Like there was a bit of marketing stuff I'd been learning, and I kind of shared how I'd acquired that client through my own story. 2 days later, got another client, $899. This guy turned up to 1 session or 2 sessions, and I never saw him again. He never asked for a refund. So I was a bit disappointed that was the outcome of the second client. But the point is I was now monetizing my own story on Twitter. When I've been throwing so much shit against the wall, all the blogs, all the tweets, nothing was working. And I finally posted 2 stories that did well, like that spoke to the right people. And about me, and 2 clients within a week. So I was, making no money to like making 1.5K, more than 1.5K. And the income just kept climbing after that. Like I just found out that, okay, stories work really, really well. The key to this whole operation is storytelling. And I just kept telling stories, and I eventually scaled to 15K a month. That was my biggest month. And I had a client who paid me 21K per year. Then I also grew my audience way faster as soon as I started telling those stories. I went from 1,000 followers roughly to 4K in I think it was 6 months. And now I have over 6,000 followers on Twitter. I have over 10,000 followers across all my platforms. I'm now telling stories on Instagram. And I started telling stories on YouTube. All this was made possible through storytelling, or what I call story maxing, which is basically and I'll tell you this. Story maxing is just telling one story a day. All I was doing was telling one story a day on Twitter. There was even a point where I was telling one story a day on YouTube, but that's another story in itself. And story maxing is just posting one story a day on your socials. And the cool thing about this is you don't know what story is going to hit. So I had a story about me going on a trip to Sri Lanka. I basically called it a monk mode. That story on Twitter did pretty well. I then told that story on YouTube. I made a video like this, and that got me a client who paid me 9K for 1 month of coaching. So I'm not telling you to become a coach here. I'm just saying you can sell anything when you story max. You can sell coaching, you can sell writing services, you can sell products. It's all in the story. The bottom line is that stories sell, and storytelling is just so much more powerful than just selling products, but building a brand, selling ideas, selling a product, selling any service you've got. Stories will just, as you can tell through my story here, again, telling you a story, and hopefully it does the job I want it to do, which is to inspire you, to plant a new idea in your mind for you to come to a conclusion of your own. And yeah, but the bottom line is that storytelling, story maxing, and really writing online in general, but specifically with story maxing, gave me freedom, it gave me impact, it gave me this life I've got here. And I'm very, very grateful. Here's the key shift that you need to make. So you need to stop, or this is at least what I did. I stopped creating content and I started storytelling. And that's what I want you to do, or that's what you need to do. Stop creating content, start telling stories, or at least documenting what's happening in your life right now. So you might be thinking, okay, what if my story's boring? Well, all I would say is look at any of the best stories in the world. A lot of them are pretty mundane. Sometimes the best stories have really interesting plot lines, but for me, my most well-performing stories are just stuff like, here's how I lost 5 kilos of weight. That did really, really well. Or here's how I went from, here's when I went for dinner last night, something really interesting happened. Or I was walking down the street and I saw a guy I knew, and it turned out I hadn't seen him in 5 years. These stories aren't super exciting. They're like everyday relatable stories. Relatable stories do better than big stories. So just keep that in mind. Relatable, the more relatable, the better. You might think no one wants to hear about you, and that is completely false. I thought that too, and once I started actually telling things about my life, my audience started responding. Like when I was writing the blogs, as soon as I started talking about myself, way more feedback. As soon as I shared that story about me finding fulfillment, I got a client. As soon as I told the story about me, the process of what I followed to get that client, I got another client. Like, stories just do all the heavy lifting for you, especially when it's told through your own lens. And you might also be thinking, I don't want to brag. I don't want to come across braggy or narcissistic or like it's all about me. And in that case, you don't have to. Like, you can just talk about your problems and how you overcame them. And that is an even more powerful story, because that's what people really want. They want to be inspired, and they want to know that the problem they're facing right now, someone's overcome it. You don't have to brag. You just tell the facts. Just tell the truth in an interesting way. So realize that your life is content. Like, that is the truth. Like, last month, for example, just to talk about some more like real tangible results here, not just like, oh, storytelling's amazing and it's amazing. Like, this is what it actually results in. So I spoke a bit about how it can help you make money, but last month I got 1.9 million views across two platforms, or a few platforms. And basically it was two stories that got most of those views. One got like 500,000 views, impressions, and the other got like, I think it was like 300K impressions. And they were just stories from my life. They were so straightforward. They weren't like super exciting. One of them was about a buddy of mine who I believed might have been like, I was like, okay, is he dating the right girl? It was just like a question, moral question. And the other one was talking about a girl that I hadn't seen in 7 years, but I went to school with her, and I hadn't seen her in 10 years. And I went to school with her, and I just bumped into her in the middle of Sydney, which was like really unlikely. Those stories are just everyday stories. And they got me a lot of eyeballs and helped me build my brand. Like, help me get followers, help me get more exposure online, which is what you need to eventually make money as well. So it's not just about actually getting conversions and getting people to buy now. It's also about just like, stories go viral. They reach more people because people care about stories. They don't care about content. So yeah, that's it for today. That's it. Just stop making content, start telling stories, start story maxing. And look, like I made this post, like this video is about writing online. The reason why storytelling and writing online go hand in hand is because think about all the best stories are written. Like, when you think about it, they are. You write a book, you write a screenplay, you write a script. Like, it's all written. So writing is the key to a great story. You can tell a story off the cuff, but really, even when you're just speaking a story out loud, you're kind of writing, because you're following a process. You're following a structure. The best storytellers follow a structure. Like, I used a structure for this. Hopefully it resonated with you. Hopefully it has inspired you. And hopefully it will also persuade you to perhaps explore a little bit more with me. So I'm back on Substack. So I have a Substack. And what I do is I go deep on the kind of topics that I talk about in these YouTube videos. In fact, the YouTube videos usually start off as my letters, and then I turn those letters into YouTube videos. And yeah, basically all the ideas that I share and all the stories I share from my own life and what's working in my business and what you can apply to get results in your life, it all starts there. And then I turn them into YouTube videos. So really, if you want to get like these ideas first, you want to be on that Substack. So just for some credibility, just in case you're the first time meeting me, I've helped over 79 people, creators, get paid for being themselves online. And like, for example, Connor, he went from 0 to 13K a month, monthly recurring revenue, that is, in 3 months. And a lot of that was done through getting a story right and yeah, basically getting the message out with digital writing. So yeah, if you want to get paid for being yourself and you want to learn a bit more, you want to go deeper you want to go a bit deeper with me on these topics and sort of explore the inner workings of my mind so that you can understand how I'm helping people like you, like how you can get paid for being yourself, which is my whole philosophy. There's a link down below. I'd encourage you to click that, and if that interests you, you can start reading my letters before they turn into videos. But the bottom line message here is stop making content. Start telling stories, start writing, and you might change your life. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.